this dissertation I would like to argue that the study of crime and drug use is complex. There are a number of diverse factors that lead people to misuse drugs. These are a mixture of social, psychological, and economic factors. Age and gender are significant statistically, but insufficient research has been carried out to explore these issues fully. In this dissertation, we will consider how people acquire a physical and psychological dependence on drugs. We will look at the pressure that can be placed upon susceptible individuals by dysfunctional families and peer pressure. Other factors that will be explored are whether personality traits or hereditary factors play a significant role in drug misuse and any consequent criminal behavior. It is also clear that there is a correlation between crime and drug taking, but again, this link is not clear-cut. It will be necessary to consider if there are factors that predispose people to deviant behavior and drug misuse, or if one factor leads to another, and if so, in what direction. We will consider at some length what is being done to police drug crime and conclude that although much is being done, it is a difficult and growing area, needing the intervention of specialized crime agencies, such as the Serious and Organized Crime Agency, SOCA. We will conclude by considering that a great deal more research needs to be done to help understand this complex issue, but that there are a number of areas where useful investments could be made. The first is in the provision of more skilled people to act as drugs counselors, in order to help lower demand for drugs. The second is to cooperate with international bodies in forming policy to fight the global drugs business and cooperate internationally with enforcement agencies. The third is for enforcement agencies in this country to act in partnership with each other and outside agencies to help disrupt the supply of drugs by removing its supplier and their money and reducing demand, by helping drug users to fight their addiction. Only when all these measures are acted upon will any significant headway be made in the war on drugs. Definitions before we embark on our explorations. I would like to define how I will use the term drugs in this dissertation. I intend to define drugs as psychoactive drugs. This is any chemical that alters perceptions and behavior by changing conscious awareness. However, I will exclude recreational drugs that are accepted by society, particularly alcohol. The reason for this is to enable me to achieve a tightly focused argument within the limits of the word count. There is a great deal of research on alcohol abuse. Much of it mirrors the misuse of other drugs. However, there are some significant differences, which would broaden out the argument too much. In this dissertation, we will restrict ourselves to drugs that are outside of society's approval. The drugs we will consider in this work fall into 4 categories: depressants, stimulants, opiates, and hallucinogens. The depressants include alcohol, barbiturates, and solvents. Stimulants work by increasing the transmission of nerve impulses in the brain. They include cocaine, MDMA, better known as ecstasy, and amphetamines. The next group of drugs, opiates, have been known since the time of the ancient Sumerians. In 4000 BC, they named the plant that produced resin from its unripe seed pods, the poppy. From this resin come the opiate drugs. These depress neural functioning, suppress physical sensation and responses to stimulation, which is why the codeine and morphine versions of this drug are used as substantial painkillers. Hallucinogens are the final group and contain LSD, PCP, and cannabis. In this dissertation, once we have considered what leads initially to drug use and misuse, we will look at the link between drugs and crime. I have defined above what I mean by drugs. I'd now like to define what I mean by crime. Such a definition is not easy to establish. There is perceivable difference between the definition made by a research psychologist and a lawyer. One has a highly conceptualized definition, the other a legal one. In this dissertation, I will use Glenn Walter's definition of crime. In his book Drugs and Crime in Lifestyle Perspective, he defines it as a rule-breaking behavior that, if known to legal authorities, would result in the rule breakers being charged with a criminal offense punishable by law. Size of drug problem. It is not an easy task to accurately record how many people take these forms of drugs on a regular basis. A national survey on drug use and health, undertaken in the United States in 2003, revealed that an estimated 3.7 million people had used heroin at some point in their life. It also revealed that 119,000 had used heroin in the month before the survey. It is perhaps encouraging that the British Crime Survey reveals that drug taking in this country amongst 16 to 24 years olds has decreased since 1998, although it has increased in people from 16 to 59. A United Nations report, published in 2005, estimated that 200 million people, or approximately 5% of the world's population, aged 15-64, have used drugs in the last year. Whichever figure is correct, the number of people who abuse drugs is large. In terms of the criminal side of crime, this is an increasingly difficult problem to deal with. The illegal market for drugs is immense, which attracts the attention of large organized crime groups. It is likely that dealing with this problem will be a major part of the work done by the new Serious and Organized Crime Agency. A major area that will need to be looked at is how to disrupt the flow of drugs into the country. This will be a complex undertaking. Using cocaine as an example, the drug originates in Latin America, principally Colombia. It's then taken first to a secondary country such as Spain, Portugal, or West Africa, and finally funneled into the UK via France, Belgium, or the Netherlands. Although Jamaica, the Caribbean island closest to Latin America, which also has a significant immigrant community in England, provides a more direct route into this country for drugs. Clearly, this means that the Immigration and Customs and Excise departments also have an important part to play in policing this industry. The structure of the argument in Chapter 1, we will look at the physical, psychological, and environmental factors that lead to addiction of abusive substances. In Chapter 2, I will consider whether there is a link between addiction and crime. We will also consider the implications of the illegal drugs market on policing. In Chapter 3, I will discuss the prevention strategies that exist. Finally, I will conclude by explaining that although it is possible to come to some conclusions in our study, it is difficult to come to a definitive conclusion due to the amount of research material and its complex and often contradictory nature. Chapter 1. The Road to Drug Use and Misuse. Introduction. In this chapter, we will consider the factors that lead to drug use and misuse. We will consider how attitudes in general concerning drug use have changed and how this has led to a greater acceptance of taking medication. We will also consider the psychological factors that could contribute to a person first falling prey to drug use. There is evidence that socioeconomic factors may be significant, and we will explore this idea. We will include a consideration of the increasingly sophisticated marketing methods used by the sellers of illegal drugs. Finally,